What's up, guys? So my name's Brandon and I'm a used car dealer, and this is my used car dealer lot, and these are all my cars. What I wanted to talk to you about today is Ford. And yesterday they reported their earnings and they were poopy. And one thing that was highlighted in these earnings is the whole year of 2022, because we have the whole year's worth of data now, and 2022 was a terrible year for Ford. There were many decisions they made that were not good. There were demand issues, there were cost issues, supply chain issues, all over the map. Just overall, 2022 was just a terrible year for Ford. And I want to talk to you today a lot about where things went wrong, what issues they're dealing with, and what kind of things that they're wanting to do to go forward to fight these issues, to try to make their company a better company for their shareholders. After they reported their earnings yesterday, they were so bad that the stock price immediately just dumped 8%. So that's what I want to talk to you about today, and we're going to get into it and give a little bit more detail on the numbers and what things that they're trying to do going forward. But if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of market updates like this, keep track of the bigger companies, the CarMaxes, the Carvanas, Ford, GM, stuff like that. And like the video so it gets out to more people that maybe won't be able to see it. And leave us a comment down if you have in the comment section if you have any questions. We go through and try to answer as many as we can, and even do a question and answer segment at the end of the week. So you know what, let's just get into it. So like I said earlier, Ford reported their numbers poopy, and for the whole year of 2022 they actually turned in a loss of $2 billion. Now, this wasn't all attributed just to the Ford Motor Company. It was also from an investment that they made in Rivian that just went terribly wrong. Rivian, if you don't know, is an all-electric vehicle company that Ford took a stake in, and over the course of the last year, their stock price just absolutely got hammered. So a lot of the loss is attributed to a bad investment in Rivian. But there were also a ton of things that Ford did wrong last year, and a lot of things that were really out of their control also. So one thing that the CEO actually said in an interview after the earnings call is that one of the biggest factors that they ran into when they were actually going through 2022 was the chip shortage. We all know that if you follow along with the car market at all of these manufacturers had to deal with chip problems, and that led to a lot of increased costs that these manufacturers could not avoid. So when they talk about these chip shortages, these chip problems, obviously the costs have went up for Ford to actually manufacture these vehicles. And then we start talking about affordability issues for the consumer. And obviously as affordability issues go up, the amount of sales that they can make are going to go down. So I just want to give you an example of the affordability crisis that we're having across all of these vehicle manufacturers. So I was talking to my personal hero, my dad, the other day, and he was a societal hero as well. He was a firefighter. So firefighters don't make a lot of money, but a little over 15 years ago, he was telling me that he was able to buy a brand new truck, and he paid about right around $25,000 for it. So you go forward 15 years from now, and a new truck similar to the one that he bought with the same features, stuff like that, today would not be even close to $25,000. That truck is going to be $75,000, $80,000, and I can almost guarantee you, and that's a triple from what he paid a little over 15 years ago. But I can almost guarantee you that the wages of a firefighter from 15 years ago to now have not tripled. So the rate of inflation in these vehicles has just absolutely skyrocketed, making it to where the average working American can't afford to buy a new F-150 truck right now. They can't afford to buy a new GMC truck because the prices have just gone up so much higher than what the average wage earner, their wages have gone up over the same period of time. So with knowing that the costs are going up, knowing that the affordability is going down, I wanted to look at the last full month's data of actual retail sales for Ford, and the last data that I have for that is December. and their actual retail sales were down 2.3%, I believe. And I was like, okay, that's fine, because interest rates in December, this past December, compared to where they were December 2021, completely different. So that's got to be okay. A lot of these other manufacturers have to be doing the same thing. But then if you think about what the landscape looked like in December of 2021 versus to where it is now, we had an inventory crisis. These Ford dealerships didn't have any cars to be able to sell. It was the worst scenario for these new Ford dealerships, because they just weren't able to get cars because they weren't getting any from the manufacturer. And fast forward to now you go to a Ford dealership and they have vehicles everywhere. So we can use an example of like a Ford Bronco. So December 2021, they were all on back order. You couldn't go to a Ford dealership and find a Ford Bronco. But fast forward to December of 2022, and they have multiples. I've been to multiple Ford dealerships around my area, and they'll have 7, 8, 10 of these things just sitting out there. These Broncos that were on back order over a year ago. So the actual availability of these cars now versus then is way better, is more than 100% better than what the availability for used cars, not used cars, but the new vehicles on these lots were. So all that's just to say that in the environment now where we have inventory readily available, they're selling less vehicles now than they were when they didn't have vehicles available over a year ago. So that's big time bad news for Ford. Another issue that they're running into with the affordability issues, with the added cost issues, is that they're fighting with their franchise dealers right now. So their franchise dealers, because they had this season where they didn't have any inventory, they had to put dealer markups on their vehicles to be able to just make ends meet, to be able to run their businesses, because they weren't selling enough vehicles because they didn't have enough vehicles. So now we're getting to a point where they have enough inventory, but these dealer markups aren't coming off. And it is actually infuriating the manufacturer Ford that these franchise dealers are still doing this. If you look at a video that I did a couple weeks ago, I'll put a link down in the description. We went through and looked at some of these Ford dealers, and they still had crazy dealer markups on a lot of these vehicles. Ford has even stated that they are wanting to cut off some of these franchise dealers because they are price gouging their customers. So it's not just Ford, the manufacturer's companies issue, it's also a franchise dealer issue, because the franchise dealers are taking advantage of these customers, and that's creating more of this downward pressure on demand, because Ford can only get out a vehicle for a certain price. They do not necessarily control what these franchise dealers can sell it for. So if these franchise dealers are all charging crazy markups on these vehicles, especially specialty vehicles like these, the F-150 Lightnings, in a lot of these EVs that are coming out, being produced through Ford, some of their higher end F-150s, then I mean, what's Ford to do other than start clamping down on a lot of these franchise dealers? And that's really what Ford has started to do. And I'm glad that they're actually noticing this and doing something about it, because it's hurting their brand name. And if a customer wants to go buy an F-150 and they see that these dealers, and all of them around the area, have these crazy dealer markups on these F-150s, then they're probably more likely to go to a Toyota, to a Nissan, to a GMC dealer to be able to buy a vehicle if they see that they're not doing these crazy dealer markups. So that leads us now into another issue, and something that Ford is not doing very well. They've recognized the issue of the dealer markups at these franchise dealers, but what they have said that they're going to do about it is actually raise their MSRP, so it's going to hopefully limit these dealers from being able to add extra markups. And that's not the way you do it. You have to fix the franchise dealers to help them figure out a way to lower their prices, not increase their prices. So I know Ford, they want to get a piece of the pie of what these consumers are having to pay, but that's not going to help your demand issues. You're not going to sell more vehicles by raising your price, especially in this environment. They even said on the call that they are factoring in a headwind of a recession. So going into a recession, the answer is not to raise your prices or keep your prices steady. They actually have to lower your prices to be able to get more cars, to get more trucks, to get more SUVs to your consumers, to be able to sell more vehicles. And this is something that Tesla has just done, and because of that, Ford has also had to lower its competition, its main vehicle that's in competition with Tesla. So if you're looking for an EV vehicle, I mean, if you go ask anybody on the street, obviously they're going to say Tesla. Tesla is the #1 provider of EVs. And what's going to end up happening is if someone is shopping around for an EV, the only reason that they're going to go for a GM, for a Ford over a Tesla is only going to be price. So since Tesla just lowered the prices on their EVs, it is now forced Ford to lower the prices on their Mach-E's. So that's a good move in the right direction for a lot of these prices of the EVs. They're too expensive too, but now that Tesla's kind of set the bar that, okay, you know what, we got to lower prices so we can sell some cars, Ford is actually following in. So I'm glad that Tesla has done that. I'm glad that Ford has done that. GM has stated that they're not going to lower their prices on their EVs. They feel like they're priced well. We'll see how that turns out, because I don't think if someone's in the market for an EV, they're going to actually go for a GM over a Tesla unless it's just price point dependent. And just a real quick side note, I know I put out a lot of these videos talking about the negatives of a lot of these bigger companies, but to tell you the truth, and I get a lot of comments saying that, well, you're just a small mom and pop shop, so you want all these big corporations to fail. No, that couldn't be farther from the truth. See, all these cars that I buy, all these cheap used vehicles, all come from auction. And how cars get to auction is from new car dealer trades. So how those new car dealers get these trade-ins is by selling their vehicles. So I want Ford, I want GM, I want CarMax to succeed and sell tons and tons and tons of cars, because that's going to give them tons and tons and tons of trade-ins that they can send to auction that I can get. And if we get a influx of trade-ins, then that means these used vehicle prices are going to go down, and that means that I can pay cheaper prices for these vehicles and be able to sell them to my consumers for a much cheaper price. So if they do great, then I do better than what I'm doing right now, because I get more inventory for me. So I want them to succeed. I want them to do good. I want them to lower their prices so their customers can get better cars and buy more of them. So no, I do not want them to fail. I want them to succeed. I want them to succeed in a great way. All right, so the next big issue for Ford in 2022 is that they were the #1 manufacturer in 22 for recalls. So they have quality concerns at Ford right now, and that's a bad headline for you to have as a manufacturer. So when someone's going to look for a vehicle now and they're looking at all the prices for these vehicles, they're going to notice that, one, Ford is a lot higher than a lot of these manufacturers, and two, they've had quality issues. So that's two headlines that Ford has with their vehicles right now that these consumers get to read, they get to look at when they're trying to decide if they want to buy a vehicle. And if I'm looking at multiple vehicles and I know that there are quality concerns about a vehicle, and also it's going to cost me more money, I'm not going to buy that vehicle. So that's one issue that Ford is going to have to overcome to be able to really fight their demand issues, because I mean, they're just losing the faith of their customer. There's another step along with fighting these dealers, that they're just going to lose the trust of their customers. So there's one last thing that I want to talk about with Ford, and it's possibly the most alarming thing in the data that we can see right now, because it's something that's happening right now that hasn't happened in years. And what that is that these dealers, these franchise dealers, there is a certain amount of days that they like to have a supply of inventory, and it's their safe zone, and it's right at 60 days. So they like to turn all of their inventory every 60 days. And what's happening with these Ford franchise dealers right now, they have now hit a point where they are over that 60-day level. So what that means is that Ford, the manufacturer, is sending these Ford franchise dealers vehicles at a faster rate than what these Ford dealerships can actually sell them for. So as they're getting more inventory in, they have to figure out what they're going to do with their inventory before they get overloaded, and they're already teetering over that healthy point, that 60-day point. So there's only really one thing for these dealerships to do, and that's lower their prices, because they can't lower the interest rates. That's not up to them. The Fed holds that in their hands, and they're not lowering them anytime soon. So what Ford has to do is these Ford dealerships, they're going to have to add some kind of incentives to be able to get people to be able to afford these cars, to be able to afford to get loans on the vehicles, or they're going to have to actually lower their prices to be able to try to increase the demand for the vehicles. So all that's to say is that there's only one place for these prices to go, and that's down, because demand's not going to go up anytime soon. And I want to just finish out this video just by telling you, like I say just about every video, wait. The environment for these new car dealers, the environment for these used car dealers is getting worse and worse every day. So if you do not have to buy a vehicle right now, don't buy one from me, don't buy one from a new dealer. Be patient, because there is nowhere for these prices to go other than down. Ford just talked about it on this earnings call. They know that cost is an issue, and they know that they have to lower costs to make their vehicles where they can actually sell them to the consumers. So if you got through this whole video, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. And like I said earlier, leave us a question down in the comments, because we're going through them and answering as many as we can. But what my wife is doing is actually pulling a lot of the interesting questions, a lot of the most common questions, and I'm going to answer them at the end of the week. So do that for us. Like I said, just thank you so much for all the support. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, like the video, and I really hope you guys have a great day.